Well, today I'm so pleased to welcome you to our very first Meet the Artist series for Iowa Artisans Gallery. This is a brand new project to help connect people during the times of social isolation and the pandemic. And we know that we have wonderful artists that will provide a lot of interesting ideas and connections for our gallery customers. So Iowa Artisans Gallery is a contemporary craft gallery started in 1984 by 12 artists. My name is Astrid Hilger Bennett, and I'm one of the founding co-owners of the gallery. Former, retired at this point. For those that don't know it, the gallery occupies a large light-filled space in the Paul Helen building. It's a historic building in downtown Iowa City. It has changed ownership in recent years, but still occupies the same venerated position in the local Iowa City community. Iowa Artisans Gallery is observing COVID-19 safe practice protocols, and it is open for you both in person and online. The current hours are 11 to 5, Monday to Friday, and Saturday, 11 to 3. These hours may change as circumstances change. Our first guest, we will be talking with Iowa artist Kate Brennan Hall about her long career doing illustrations and sketching, which, as you will see, is the foundation for her many wonderful tea towel and note card designs you're already familiar with. Kate has put together a wonderful slideshow. I know it is wonderful because I've seen it. And you'll be able to see close up the arc of her studio process. It's really fun. Before we move to Kate, though, I want to shine a spotlight on other locally owned small businesses in the Iowa City area. We're all in this together. And for this webinar, Old Capital Screen Printers is our sponsor. Old Capital Screen Printers considers themselves the printers of the people and has a long history of screen printing, apparel, and other types of things. Thank you, Old Capital Screen Printers, for being a part of this first event. Now, Kate is a graduate of Minneapolis College of Art and Design, where she focused on illustration and printmaking. She has worked with clients such as Target, MasterCard, Blue Cross Blue Shield, American Airlines, and Doubleday. And in this town, which is such a literary town, I know the publisher connections are very interesting. She has exhibited her work in Europe and the United States. Her current projects include working on product lines for the home that feature funny dogs and cats, along with many other ideas. The main theme of her work is this: she seeks to elevate the ordinary and necessary things that awaken us to the beauty of the world around us. And also, she's a resident of Cedar Falls. One of the reasons I was really hopeful that Kate would be our first guest is that it's really been so hard to find joy during the pandemic. During these days, Kate's work and her Instagram posts have always made me smile. And I know that's true of our customers too. Thank you, Kate. We need that. So at this point, I'm going to turn the camera and the screen share over to Kate and unmute. I got it. I guess I didn't unmute you well enough. Just a second, we're getting it. Here you go. All right.
Hello. Astrid, your Instagram account brings equal amounts of joy, and that is probably my greatest hope for this presentation, is just to bring light and life and color it's a bit of an overcast day in Iowa, and in these hard times. So I set up my this webinar in a way for my experiences of being a part of a book club in this book club, these amazing, wise, and wonderful women research authors when they present the book and tell about the influences that brought them to write this particular book. So that's what I'll be doing. You might be asking, what does influence mean? To me, it's the way an artist's point of view seeps into one's life. You might be out and about and see a shadow on a wall, a painting, a building, flowers, and it reminds you of a certain artist. They literally change the way you look at life, the way you see life all around you. So these are there's a fraction of the artists that have seeped into my thinking and just made me think differently. So you can see, of course, Grant Wood, yes. I'm from Iowa, and it's not like I naturally just like Iowans' work, but he's just a great artist. Rita Kent was also born in Iowa. Paul and Ben weren't, but we won't hold that against them. Matisse, Edward Hopper, the artists of the WPA. I remember going to the Devil's Tower, and in my mind, seeing the Devil's Tower in person, and then this image in my mind and thinking about the artist. One of the greatest influences in my life has been Karita Kent's list of rules, art department rules. Judy Stone Nunley from bluejayranch.com, please visit her, gave these rules to her printmaking students, and they have been a framework that I have worked with ever since. They've hung in every studio. So if you haven't seen them before, I encourage you to look them up and read them. They're great. Probably one of the most influential artists in my life with my work is, if I pronounce it right, Raoul Dufy. His line work, the way he, addresses the human form, light, shadow, transparency versus opaqueness. So some of the common themes in my work are beauty in the ordinary, the flattening of the graphic view of a scene, transparent versus opaque, explosive color, emotion in the human form, movement, humor. I came to understand late in life that that was a part of my work, and you'll see that later on. And the isolation of forms. So I broke this down into the different decades of my life. I'm just entering my 6th decade, and I thought it was appropriate. When I went to MCAD, I went thinking I was going into an illustration program. Unfortunately, they dropped it within the first 6 months of me arriving at MCAD. So I explored all areas of the design and fine art departments, eventually graduating with an honors interdisciplinary degree, because I value both, all of those ways of thinking. This is an etching with some elements of my childhood. It's been many years since I worked on it, but I'm pretty sure some parts of it were dry point, but it was a copper that I etched into and put into an acid bath and then printed. So the years of my 20s or at MCAD, I would do personal work, of course, in college, but the way I supported myself was by gradually getting illustration projects. The Twin City Reader was a free publication, and I approached them and asked for an internship. I did many illustrations for them, and that led to other employers, businesses, design firms calling me up for work. So that was the way I earned my living in college. This other piece here is a silkscreen print. It's a portrait of my mom. And when I say transparent versus opaque, those symbols within my mom's apron, this is a type of apron she wore, I printed those, and then I laid a transparent layer of peach, almost like flesh, over those symbols. My senior thesis project, I didn't count them all, but I think I wrote about a dozen poems based on my childhood. I wrote them out on a copper etching plate backwards. That's how it works in printmaking. And for our purposes here, for legibility in Zoom, I just used a font to represent the poem. And the illustrations, the best way to describe the process was that I put down a bit of an emulsion, if you will. I laid fabric on it. I ran it through the etching press, which pressed the fibers of the fabric into the copper gooey plate. Then I etched it. And then I sat down and almost like a Rorschach test, if you will, I burnished out the images that I saw within the plate that related to the poem that I had written. I really loved that process. Around that time, I also was at the Minnesota Center for the Book Arts. I took a class there, and this image on the left-hand side, it's an E.E. Cummings poem, one of my favorites, and it's a wood engraving that I did. You can probably already see that clotheslines are featured in my work across my life. As a child, I lived on an acreage, and my mom, I like to say, was an early environmentalist. We always used a clothesline to dry our clothing, never the dryer. So I love clotheslines. I love the movement of the clothing on the line. It's like people are dancing, fresh air, and just, I love those symbols. The image on the right, right about that time, I was in my studio and I just grabbed some scraps of printmaking paper from my senior project and started experimenting with gouache. That led to a certain style of illustration that I would do for many years. It was kind of a bit like that etching process in that the brush kind of etched out with color onto that black surface. This is a piece for the Texas Monthly. About that time, I started branching out from the Twin Cities, clients there to across the country. And I would start working for different magazines. I also illustrated a book called Spit Nolan by Creative Education out of Minnesota. They don't tell you this in art school, but it pays to get a project in on time, work well with others, because it led to this. I think this project, the publisher Creative Education said, Kate, would you like to be a part of this, this exhibition? We need a representative representing the United States, which was quite daunting because there are all these very famous illustrators. So I don't speak French. A nice person at McAllister College in St. Paul translated the manuscript for me, and I set about to illustrate The Lazy Ship. A little side note on this particular illustration, I always tuck in a little bit of me or someone I know into the illustrations. And the teacher in the upper left-hand corner refers to someone I had at MCAD. So I would continue on working with gouache on paper. My courses at MCAD that were about architecture, the history of architecture, came in handy. So the building on the left, Santa Barbara Magazine cover, it's actually a mission, a church. However, the buildings on the right, that's all made up in my head. The Science Museum of Minnesota had an article about in the Twin Cities farms that the city grew up around. And here you will see definitely the influence of Grant Wood. I love of clotheslines, chickens, cows. I love a good barn. And I love those old houses that are on homesteads. So my notes here. So I would continue on with that style with the black on paper, gouache on black paper, until some things in my personal life made me feel like I needed a change and a transition, just to a brighter base to work on, and a chance to be more celebratory in my work. When you're etching into black, it kind of holds you. When you're painting a line with black on your brush, there's a freedom that comes with this. So this is from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. I did tons of work for them, and I love fairs. I love state fairs. I love carnivals, the circus, and this has always been one of my favorite pieces. The story behind this particular piece is kind of funny in that a design firm approached several illustrators and said, we will pay you for your illustration work, but we'd like you to come up with an image for a mural for Haagen-Dazs ice cream and their coffee shops that they were starting to build. But here's the deal. Do not put a cup of coffee or tea or anything affiliated with tea or coffee in the imagery. Okay, so this is my, this is what I thought would be interesting on a mural, the tree of life and a little bit of a still life. And yes, which image did they choose? They chose the artist who did the cup of coffee and tea. So anyway, that was a lesson, and don't always, you don't always know what they want, but have fun anyway. So by this time, I had experienced the feeling of being in the audience at a symphony. And so that experience informed me when I set about to illustrate, I think this article was on teamwork. And I enjoyed this piece because of the color, because of the semi-transparent gouache on the paper, the movement. I also like all things heavy equipment, trucks. things to do with building, of course, architecture. So when the Hartford Current called with a project to please illustrate how to build a strawberry shortcake, this is what I came up with. And I've always enjoyed that image. So I started like Hartford Current, the Baltimore Sun, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, just really branching out and doing a lot of illustrations for these publications. I really enjoy the quick turnaround in newspaper work because there is no time to sit and fuss about things. You narrow in your field of vision, what you're going to do. Yeah, I just always like that. And the other thing I like about it is that my humble illustration, it's in the paper one day and then it's in the recycling bin or the cat box. It's just next. By this time, the piece on the right, art directors were calling because they noticed the diversity in my work. Early on, as a young illustrator, it bothered me how it only seemed like white people were featured in ads and brochures and just all of the imagery around us. So I just quietly started sneaking my way of thinking into the images. And sometimes there was pushback, but more often it was, hey, I never thought about, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yep, we should do that. So it may seem like a little thing, but it was important to me to reflect the reality of my life. I became a parent in my 30s, and that definitely influenced my work in a very wonderful way. The image on the left is after a day spent in an amusement park near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we were living at the time. If you look really closely at the pregnant woman by the ice cream stand, that's me. I loved that experience so much that I came home and I just painted this painting because it was just a glorious day. This next one, I did a series of probably 12 illustrations based on childhood tasks, teaching my children just the basics: comb your hair, brush your teeth, wash your hands. Later on, my husband and I would collaborate together on a children's book with his limericks. And while it was never published, it was a great experience to work together. So as I got more further into parenting, I also began to be more creative in the kitchen. And we lived in Pittsburgh at the time. And if you've ever been to Pittsburgh, it is a city, it is a region that celebrates food and family and gathering. It's just a wonderful place. They would celebrate any holiday, real or imagined. So that definitely came into my work, and it influenced my paintings for this cookbook. The image on the right, just a side story on that. The editor wanted me to combine in that chapter Greece and Turkey. And I thought, how am I going to do this in this space? So my answer to it was day and night, Greece and Turkey, divided by the tree. So my 40s, hectic time. good time, but sometimes when you get in the thick of things as an artist, there's not always time to play when you're making your living as an illustrator. So this particular piece represents a break that I had, and I just brought some crayons along, sat by a lake, and drew it. And it was a good reminder to myself that yes, you need to make time for yourself and you need to make time to play. Otherwise, your creative well can kind of get dried up. So when I mentioned humor, this was a particular project for an insurance company in which they were dealing with safety issues. Some pretty serious in that they wanted to bring some levity to it. And so 12 illustrations for the calendar, and I tried to bring humor to it. It was a very enjoyable project. I put this this image in not because it's mind-blowingly amazing, but to represent a period in my life where I had I did 3 large campaigns for this company, and some projects pay the bills and teach compromise, and you try to hold on to your voice within them. I don't know what else to say about that, but I'm glad I worked on them, but it was a challenge to maintain my voice in those projects. Around this time, screen printing inks evolved to include water-based inks, which were much more conducive to a home-based studio. So I started building that into my illustration projects. This is actually my eldest daughter, and I was influenced by reading Animal Vegetable Miracle by Barbara Kingsolver. And when they said I could do anything I wanted, I thought, okay, I'll illustrate that concept, which was very enjoyable. So that led me to this particular personal piece. It was a little cookbook, maybe 6 by 4 inches. And I think I made 50 of them and sent them out to art directors. I thought they might enjoy just a little chapbook. This is another one of my favorite sayings, poems, and another screen print. I think one of the reasons that this poem resonates with me is because probably at that time, there was this notion that if you were a part-time artist, it wasn't as good as being full-time. But I was trying to balance parenting and being an artist at the same time. So that line about to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child or a garden patch, really resonated with me. Around this time, I gathered up my courage to set my own writing into print, kind of borrowing back from my 20s, that print in the upper left-hand corner, and this is the way to listen, is one of the poems I wrote when I was 23, 24. The pieces with the cats and the dogs would later come into play with my tea towels. Uppercase Magazine, if you're not aware of it, It's out of Canada, and it's a beautiful publication. There's magazines and there's compendiums that Janine puts together. So this print appeared in Uppercase Magazine Compendium of Print with many, many talented people. I was so thankful to be a part of it. And the readers of Uppercase Magazine received about 50 of these prints tucked in to the magazine. This is a tiny print, but Rachel Carson is my shero, and when asked to be a part of a tiny print show at Iowa State University, boom, she came right to mind, and I thought how appropriate for Iowa State. So this is one of my tiniest prints, but it's one of my favorites, and I might be sending it out to a couple of shops. So about around 2012, I jumped from printing on paper to fabric. I thought it would be interesting to have artwork on a towel hanging in someone's kitchen, which is really the heart of your home. And I'm a very practical person too. And so I liked that artwork on a towel. So I just came up with various designs. I started selling them online across shops and galleries across the country. I sold my goods farmers markets. I loved meeting people and all the other vendors. This particular shot is a wonderful display created by the folks at Iowa Artisans. My I'll Lick the Dish, You Dry towel collection grew to about 30 breeds of dogs. And I tried my best to keep up with printing them all. At this time, I'm discontinuing this line. It is my, I guess, your favorite of the things I do, but I really need time to explore and investigate other imagery. So no pressure, but scoop them up while you can. I won't be printing them. So behind the scenes, I was experimenting some on paper when I could, and that led to the 2018 100 Days project. It is based out of Instagram. And for 100 days, you create an image and post it. To go from the labor-intensive quality of getting a towel to print, designing it, coating the screen, burning the screen, printing, drying the towel, packaging it, to this, where it was like instantaneously making the image through cut up prints and that, it was such a joy. I have a very small following on Instagram and that, but they are hearty, wonderful people, and they encouraged me. And it was so good that they were feeling, I could feel like they were feeling that spontaneity too. I took prints from back in my MCAD days, the etchings, and worked into them. And like I say here on the slide, it was like chatting with my younger self, adding all these different decades of experience onto that initial etching. It was so much fun. I ended up, people asked me to have a show of these pieces, and it was just a one-day pop-up thing, but it was enjoyable just getting the feedback and responses from people. So this led to 2019 100 Days project. You know, after a long day of printing towels and packaging them and packing orders, I would head to my desk and make these images. maybe like in the upper left-hand corner there, I would just smear black ink, kind of like that the pieces back in college. And I would just look at the black ink and think, what do you want to be? And up would pop, excuse me, that image. The image right to the right of that, that's collage, that's cutting out old prints, color swatches. It was just so much fun to do. This particular batch of 100 pieces will, God willing, with COVID, be at the Hearst Center for the Arts in Cedar Falls. The shows had to be canceled a couple of times. I totally understand, but it will one day be in a show there. COVID-19 brought challenges and opportunities. We spent a lot more time outdoors. We've always hiked and done things, but this time I brought watercolors. And I just really enjoyed the process. And I guess you all enjoyed it too, because people would say, are you gonna put that on a card? Okay. I was just thinking of it as an experience. I wasn't thinking of it as a thing. So, but thank you for thinking of it as a thing and encouraging me. I'm really enjoying the transparency of watercolors. These are actually flowers I got for my birthday. I decided to make kind of my own inspiration board, bulletin board in my studio, just putting up pieces of mine and seeing where I was going. I hadn't done that in many years, and it's really making a difference. This next decade, it's going to be interesting. I'm probably going to be doing more painting. I will be printing towels and coming up with designs, because I still enjoy the physicality of screen printing onto fabric. If you go to my Instagram and you go through, or my Facebook, and go through these images, you'll see hints of ideas that I want to explore. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Kate. If we could all clap, there would be a lot of applause right now, right? If you want to stop screen sharing, or we could leave that up for a minute if people want to look at your Instagram handles and such. We'd like to have a little Q&A, and I do see that someone has clapped in the chat. So
I know who it is.
So we're going to take some questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you can type it in the Q&A little module that's down at the bottom of your screen if you're using a laptop. It's in other places on other devices. Or if you really want to, you could put it in the chat too. I'll probably check it out. But let's see. Kate, do you want to stop your screen share now?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm very touched to see the entire process of what you went through and how you evolved it and so forth. We just need more newspapers with illustrations too.
Yeah, they really cut back on their illustration budgets. Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about why you think an art education is important.
Well, I guess in my experience, at MCAD, there was studio work and then there were liberal arts classes. So they both informed each other, everything from art history, design history, public buildings. I remember that was one course. And the studio work, you are pushed to explore things that you wouldn't normally do. I guess I would liken it to being in a book club. There's often books that I do not want to read. I'm not interested in it, but I'm a part of this, so I must move forward and work together. So I read it, and it always changes me for the better. So that's art education. It also, I guess I'll put it this way. I've been a part of many committees and so forth over my adult life where you had to come up with ideas, problem solve and that. And sometimes people would say, how did you come up with that? And I'd think, well, design theory taught me to think about the user group. This other course told me about this. You're born with a basic base of talent. And I think an art college education builds upon that. And also, gosh, all the people that you meet there, friends for life, and just amazing. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, and I think that at the gallery, we used to get many parents and children, their college age kids coming in, or just the parents while the kids were doing an orientation, and they would think, oh, I don't know about an art thing. I'd like them to do engineering or something. And I used to tell them, I think art education is one of the best, one of the really solid things they can study, because it teaches them how to take a project from beginning to end, how to problem solve, how to work with other people. And even if they don't become artists professionally, that's a skill, like you said, that can be used. And often they have something that when they later on have time or retire, they have something to draw upon. And so I just was always for it as well. So, so we had another question from you. Are you looking forward to being your own client? And are there any themes that you hope to explore next? That's from Kristen.
Yes. I kind of have already been my own client, but I'm kind of pushing it even further in that I'm going to be doing things that that aren't expected, that I wouldn't be expected to do, if that makes sense. Kind of like the writing my writing that I took into the screen prints, just kind of, I want to do my best, but caring less about what people want me to do or expectations. So yes, I am looking forward to it. It's just not to whine, but when you are your own manufacturer, because that's basically, I'm manufacturing my own art with the towels and cards. It's just hard to carve out that time. You wouldn't believe how much inventory takes your time. So anyway.
That brings up another question from Martha, who's asking, what's it like to work with a client, the process? I know you mentioned several things and you just alluded to it just now, but is there anything else you want to mention about working with a client? Maybe for someone who is contemplating doing that?
Yeah, it's, well, I set about to be an illustrator because I could see the collaborative level with it. And I would liken it to like double Dutch jump rope. If any of you have done that, you have to get into a rhythm with the other person, so you're not knocked off course, either one of you. And but there's a joy in that process together. You know, again with that analogy of the double Dutch, it's just once you get into a rhythm with like an art director and editor and you're working on a book together, there's so much joy in it. Now, there can be struggles, the meeting of minds in that, but I really enjoy it. And but I would say, as a young artist, know your place, in that you're working with people who have been doing this for decades, and learn from them. They're just like an extension of a professor that you were working with. Bring your best, get the job in on time, be grateful, thank them, and professionalism combined with talent is the key. And so
those are good
thanks, Martha.
words. That's good.
Pardon me?
Those are good words.
Okay.
Yeah. Beth is wondering if you and John have ever thought about publishing your children's book.
We have. Life got busy, and I kind of set that aside. John writes limericks, and they are amazing. And that's, I think, probably one of the things that we want to do is collaborate in that way. He did write a novel, a self-published novel that I illustrated the cover. But yeah, that's a dream, Beth, to work together on more projects. I will say that when things got super busy for me and I couldn't keep up with the printing, John and I met in the MCAD print shop. He was a night student, and I was a full-time student. And so when things got busy, I said, "Can you help me? Can we print together?" And we have had the best time printing together. He has the most wicked sense of humor ever, and we just enjoy working together. So very grateful for his help, yeah.
Some of those limericks could make good tea towels. You know, I wanted to give a shout out. I think she's no longer on the call, but Janine from Uppercase Magazine was on this webinar earlier. Great. And it's funny because I've been a subscriber to Uppercase, and she also published the Feed Sacks books, which Lindsay McRae, another yes. locally known person, wrote and is now in another printing. And it was looking at Uppercase Magazine and seeing your little thing in the magazine, and I said, wait a minute, there's an Iowa artist I don't know. So through your website, I reached out and made a connection, and that's how I discovered you. So all of these things, Uppercase Magazine is a really incredible operation, and it's a difficult thing to do, and she works very hard, and just like all of our small businesses, the gallery and such, you know, we all work very hard.
Yeah, she has my admiration and gratitude.
Yeah. I don't know if there are any other questions, but I just feel like this has been really a fun thing. Let me just see. Also, you wanted to say something, I think you mentioned in an earlier conversation that being self-taught can also work, you know.
Yes. Yes, I definitely feel that there are artists that are self-taught. My bias is that it would just be harder, from my point of view, without someone coming alongside you and with some guidance, but more power to them. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for presenting today. This has really been great, and I plan to save this recording and put it on a YouTube channel that will be devoted to Iowa Artisans Gallery Meet the Artist series. And I will let everybody know about that next week or so when it's done. And I just wanted to thank all the audience members for coming to this first time event and taking the dive with us on doing it.
Thank you.
Our next event on October 17th, we're going to do them a little more often this fall, but normally they'll be about once a month. But on October 17th, we'll be featuring John Martinek, who is a local painter, printmaker, illustrator. His political illustrations are in Little Village magazine, who will be the sponsor. But the program itself will showcase really his paintings and his prints. I just wanted to let you know that the gallery is open for you, both in person and online, and need to wear a mask when you get there. And we also encourage you to check out Kate's website and Instagram, as well as the galleries, and also O Capital screen printers. We're very grateful that we can shine a light on them as well. In the meantime, take care, be well, be safe, let creativity bring a little bit of joy to the moment, because we all need that. So thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.